Hi and welcome to Christ Central Church Stories. This is our 4th episode. I am not Joe Crummy, who is your usual host. My name is Hazel Surgener, and Joe has kindly given me this opportunity to interview our next guest, Gemma Booth. Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
To start off, I'd like to play a little game of Would You Rather.
Okay.
Just a few little questions. Living in Canada, this is a good question to ask. Would you rather be too hot or too cold? We have the extremes.
That is a good question. I think I would be too hot and then have a pool to cool off in.
I'm not sure that's an option, but okay. Would you rather have chocolate or ice cream?
Or, being a Brit, I would definitely choose Cadbury's chocolate every time.
Would you rather have a Northern Irish accent or a Scottish accent?
Well, given that you're married to Ollie,
no pressure.
I feel like the correct answer is Northern Irish.
Good answer. Okay, this is the question from my son Finn, who you know so well. Would you rather have a cat or a dog?
Again, knowing Finn, I feel like the correct answer should be a cat.
There you go.
I do have a love for dogs.
Of course. Thank you, Gemma. So you have been a great friend to us as a family. 4 years we've known you, which is incredible. But you've also been such a blessing to our wider church family, and we'll hear more about that soon. But can you first of all tell us about growing up and kind of how you became a Christian?
Yeah. So I was brought up in a Christian family, not just like immediate family, but very much extended family. Parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles. So going to church was very much just part of life, I guess. But I guess for me, I kind of made my own personal decision for the first time when I was 6. We went to Stoneleigh Bible Camp, which was a big family Bible camp and lots of different kids' work activities for us to go to. And I think it was in Sunshine Sixes that I remember the first time making that decision to follow Jesus for myself. But I know that, like, for lots of kids, that kind of happens repeatedly.
Yes.
At lots of different stages. So I know that probably happened again, probably when I was 7 and maybe when I was 8.
Yeah.
Same prayer, yeah. So that was kind of the first time. And then I joined the kids club team when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And that played a really significant part in my relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And the team around me helped disciple me, and I wasn't just serving on the team, I was learning things about what it is to have a relationship with God.
Yes.
In the teaching times at Kids Club, but also in walking alongside other Christians as well.
Amazing. And so you were part of the team leading it, you were never actually part of Kids Club?
When Kids Club started, I was like a year or two too old to actually attend Kids Club. So I did the next best thing.
Amazing.
And joined the team.
So going to kids, so being a helper and learning and actually gaining from the teaching and all of that, which is just
I started
amazing.
Out doing, lots of the little roles like cleaning up after games and just being around on the team. Serving and hearing the teaching and hearing what was going on.
Amazing. Was there like moments, growing up, obviously entering teenage years and that kind of stuff, like was there some struggles in your faith or just in general life that you can kind of think about?
I think generally a lot of people probably find the teenage years fairly difficult.
Yes.
I think for me, because I was so involved in Kids Club, that was like what I did every Saturday. Wow. And so I didn't really do the whole school thing in the same way as a lot of my friends did.
Right.
A lot of my friends were the Kids Club team, and so where a lot of my school friends were kind of being pulled into like the sports and the different activities that way, my priority was Kids Club.
Yeah.
And actually looking back, I'm really grateful for that, because I think that kind of kept me in a really good direction.
Yeah.
I know lots of my other friends that kind of did get pulled in another direction, which can be really hard. Does that mean that I didn't have any difficulties? No. But that was a really good grounding point, and having people around me that surrounded me and were able to input into my life, was so important to me, and I think has really shaped how I view young people now and how I want to input into their lives, because I know what an impact it had on my life at that age.
Amazing. We've been learning about in our women's Bible study about the importance of community, isn't it? And how we, to be there for one another, and how we need that from such a young age, isn't it? You know, and it's not just kids being with kids, you know, the importance of adults and kids, kind of that mixing, and you're a great example of that.
You know, I had so many people that were kind of just a bit older than me that were almost like big sisters. I'm the oldest child, so I didn't have any older siblings. Yeah. But I had so many people that were older sisters to me who were so invaluable in, you know, those teenage years in particular.
And we'll see how that's kind of come into life with this, your new season that you're with here in Canada. So you've been involved in Kids Club, and then what was your job? Like, what did you start moving into?
So after I finished university, I got a job as a TA or an EA, and I worked in the same school for 7 years, and I loved my job there. It was tricky to begin with in the first couple of years, but then I really settled into that school. It was a very multicultural school.
Which is, remember that, because this is a very interesting point, isn't it? How God has paved the way.
Yes. Yeah. So the majority of children had English as their second language, and I loved being in the classroom and working with the kids. Kids Club eventually stopped, and so it was nice that I still had that input of being involved in kids' lives in a very different kind of way. Yeah. And so I worked in that school for 7 years and loved being there. And then also at the same time as that, I ran the kids' work for the Devoted event, which is a Christ Central event. Yeah. And I ran Going Bananas for the 8 to 11-year-olds as well.
It's like a big summer camp, and so it's kind of like a full-on week.
At the end of August. Yeah. It's a very full-on weekend.
And how many children were in
8 to 11s? Yeah. Between 120 and 140. So it was a big age group.
Yes.
And I did that for 8 years. And it was after that weekend that I first met Joe.
Right. So, pause. So Gemma's been in Sheffield, working happily, great church, family, friends, life is good. Yep. And then you, at the end of this Bible week, you meet Joe, who has very much strong connections with the church in Sheffield, and that kind of, Jeremy Simpkins and all that.
Yeah, Joe came to visit the Sheffield church from here in Fredericton, and he was talking about the plan for the 12 Atlantic
speaking in the main meeting.
No, this is back in the church in Sheffield.
Oh, he was in
after Devoted.
Right.
And he had a map of Atlantic Canada up on the screen, and I was like, this is really exciting. And I didn't really know why at first I was excited, but then I remembered when I was 15 or so, I was at New Day, and someone came and prayed with me and gave me a prophetic word about going to the nations and leading the hands of little children. And this prophetic word came back to me, and I was like, Canada is a nation. And I think at the time when I heard that, in my head I was like, the nation's Africa and an orphanage and that kind of teenage mindset. But I was like, Canada's a nation. And there was something that was just beginning to stir. Wow. And I went over to speak to Joe just to say hello. And he was like, yes, you can come. And I was like, okay. In a very Joe Crummy type of way.
Yes. Sorry, going back to the word that you felt that you had when you were 15, was that someone gave that to you, or you just felt God speaking that to you?
No, someone came and prayed for me. It was a response time in an evening meeting. Yeah. And she was actually one of the main speakers from the New Day event, and she came over and prayed with me. So she didn't know me at all. I only knew her from the main stage, and she came and brought this to me. And I've since been in touch with her over the years and told her I've moved to Canada. Yes.
And so in that moment, it was just kind of tucked it in your heart and was a yes to God.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
Is this part of what you spoke to me all those years ago? Yeah. And then the door started to open, and
So Joe says yes.
So Joe says yes. And then Mark joins the conversation, and he says, no, keep Mayspring Bank free. I'd like you to bring a team out to Canada to do Kids Club.
Right.
So that's when the plan started. And
so you came to visit.
Yeah, in 2014.
So Mark and Debbie were here for their first 6 months, and then a group from Sheffield came to do like a kids club.
Yeah.
Week long, was it?
It was just a weekend.
A weekend.
It was a very short trip.
And amazing, like a group of just volunteers,
Yeah.
paying their own way to come,
Yeah.
wanting just to bless the church that Mark and Debbie had come to visit.
Yeah.
For that
So
season.
we came, there was 13 of us.
Yeah.
We came over and did Kids Club for the weekend. And again, I was here, and I was the one that had to leave first because I was working in school. And so I had to go back because it was school term time. And I remember the last Sunday before I flew back on the Monday, the preach in the morning was about the nations. And I was like, oh, Canada's a nation. And as I was packing my bag that evening, I just was brought to tears, and I didn't really know why, and I didn't really know what was going on. And then as I took off on that plane on the Monday, as I flew over St. John River, again just started crying on the plane, which when you're flying by yourself is pretty embarrassing. And it was just God starting to plant something, that there was more in Fredericton.
Yes. So this was 2014.
14.
So you go home, go back to your job.
Yeah. I chatted with the leaders back in Sheffield about some of the things that I was feeling. I came back on a few more trips just as vacations.
You made some friends, and it was just
Came to stay with Jodie a few times, just spent some time here.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to know some people.
I remember meeting you, and I was just like, that's interesting. Just coming for a visit.
Yeah, I did a few visits.
Yeah. She's here again.
I kind of felt I couldn't just come here and start Kids Club by myself.
Right.
It had to be something that the church wanted to do. And so after a few visits, nothing kind of was seeming to be opened. And on my last visit in Easter 2016, I actually set up an interview with someone from MCAF. And I was like, well, maybe if I got a job here and I was living here, the church might be more inclined to be like, oh, there's someone here, and we could start a kids club now. We've got someone to do it.
Yeah.
So I left that visit going to send my resume to this lady. But when I got back to the UK, I kind of just felt God reminded me of the story of Abraham and Sarah and how God had promised them a child, but then they kind of went about their own way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I feel like God is calling me here, I don't need to make my own way to make that happen. And I felt like me getting myself my own job to be here was a bit like making my own way here.
It's very wise.
And so I decided I wouldn't make any more trips back. That was going to be it. I'd done my trips, and if God wanted me in Canada, he would make a way. So that was Easter 2016.
Okay. So you'd kind of laid it down and just
and left it to God.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months later, Mark emailed and said, we'd like to start a church, not a church, we'd like to start a kids club. Would you be interested in moving here?
Wow.
To do that. And I was like, okay.
Your heart said yes.
Yes.
Okay. I've been waiting.
It wasn't really much decision.
Yes.
It was like, yes, I'll do it.
Okay, and so this was now, what month was this?
This was like September
Okay.
of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you start the process.
So then you start the process of applying for a visa.
Yes, which is not easy.
It's not easy, no.
No.
So the visa that I was applying for was a young person's working holiday visa, which means you can live and work and travel on this visa. So I applied into the pool, and then you have to wait to be selected from the pool to then apply into the visa.
Okay.
So I applied, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited some more.
And hoping that you would start the next September. Like you wanted.
They actually wanted to start in the Easter.
Okay. But that wasn't nothing was moving.
So in September I applied.
Yeah.
Easter came around. Still no selection.
And work-wise, had you kind of suggested to work you might be leaving? And
I kind of told them that was the plan. They were amazing at being really accommodating and just said, well, keep us updated. So I'd waited 17 weeks and heard nothing.
Yes.
And it got to the point where, like, my faith levels were starting to dip, and there was lots of rants, and there was lots of frustration, and there was lots of conversations with God about, but I thought you'd open this door, and why is this not happening? And, but we kept praying, and we kept praying, and we kept praying, and the numbers of visas, so there are a certain number of visas in the pool, and that number kept dropping, and dropping. And the number of people applying to the pool kept rising and rising and rising. And it got down to the last 5 visas. And there was over 6,000 people in that pool.
And at this moment, like, just from a personal, I know that when you're kind of thinking of moving on, your roots kind of start loosening, don't they? And you're kind of like already in that next place emotionally. And, so I guess you're thinking, am I staying here? And that's not a bad thing, but I just don't kind of feel... Yeah. So you're kind of in this limbo, aren't you, of like, where am I going to be? And
so it got to the point where I kind of had to make a decision, also because of school, like, in terms of my job, but also, like, if I don't get this visa, what am I going to do?
Right.
Kids Club was going to go ahead with or without
me. I remember praying about it. Here, we have to get this visa!
So it kind of got to the point where I had to make a decision, and there was lots of suggestions of, well, why don't you just come out here on a visitor visa for 6 months? And at least then you'll be here, you can start Kids Club, and then we'll just see what happens. But again, it just kind of felt like you're trying to make a way that's not the way I have for you.
Yes.
And that was a really tough decision. I remember having to say to Mark and Debbie, I'm not going to take that road. I'm not going to take that visitor visa. I'm going to wait it out for my visa. And so I actually kind of said to them, I'm not going to be coming, which was really hard. Like, this is the thing that I've been waiting for. This is the thing I've been praying for. This door seemed to be open. And so I had to make the decision and be like, maybe this is just not the right time. And so I told them I wasn't coming. I told work I'd be staying. So they put me back into a classroom.
Oh, unpack your boxes.
And again, like, you start to uproot everything. And then I kind of had to, maybe I'm staying again. So then you start to resettle again. So it was a bit of a roller coaster. But then, eventually, after making that decision, the visa then did come through.
Wow.
And
so, like, email? Was it?
It was an email. I got an email to say, you have a message in your account. And I was like, it's one of two things. It's either the pool is now closed, there are no more visas, or you've been selected. And it was I'd been selected.
Amazing. And this was
This was oh goodness, I should have checked the timeline again.
No, but it was kind of...
It was close. It was really quick. And they said it would be an 8-week processing time of, like, having to get all your documents through and processed. I submitted my documents on the Friday, and it was all processed and completed and accepted by the Monday.
Which, having gone through the visa process, you literally feel like you submit it and it sits on someone's desk for like goodness knows how long. So, but God was very much
48 hours later, I had everything, I was good to go. Wow. And I came here, I arrived on the Wednesday night. I went visiting on the Thursday, and we started Kids Club on the Saturday.
Wow. Whirlwind.
Yeah.
Like, that visa story is just incredible. And I know that for you, that was a huge faith-building kind of thing in your life, isn't it? That you've referred back to many times.
Because, so many times.
Yeah. And how God does that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if this is you, God, and then it happens, you know, and you kind of think, you know he's in that, you know, and that's kind of how he puts us through these things, do you know, in a way to, like, build us up, isn't it? And,
at the time, I was like, what are you trying to teach me? What am I going to need to learn from this?
Right.
But in those early weeks when I was here, and it was really hard, and I was missing home, and what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I could look back on that story and be like, well, no, like, it's clear, like, that visa was mine, and God gave me that for a reason. And
whereas if it had just come easily, you'd have been like, well, does this just happen for everybody? And
but I knew with so much certainty that that visa was mine, and I was here for a reason.
So you're in Fredericton.
Yep.
Start Kids Club.
Yep.
how was that? Like that kind of transition and...
Gosh, it feels so long ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the things I thought I was expecting to be difficult weren't as difficult.
Right.
And there were things I never expected to be difficult that were difficult.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how people do this without a church family.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I was so blessed and so thankful, and still am, that I was living with a church family.
Yes.
And initially that was just going to be when I first settled in.
Right.
4 years
4
later,
years later.
I'm still living with them.
You even moved house with them.
I moved house with them. They took me with them. Which has just been amazing.
Yeah.
Like, to go through such a big change,
Mm-hmm.
but to have a family around you.
Yeah.
Especially when you move here by yourself and you don't have anyone else going through that with you.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of people in this church who have made that move.
Yeah.
And so that's also really nice to have, and you can talk with them, but to live with a family who have also done that move with an amazing support, which, you know, I'm just so thankful that God lined that all up as well. But yeah, it was amazing to be here and doing Kids Club after all that time of feeling that's what God wanted.
And Kids Club kind of just hit the ground running, really. And just the numbers kept building, and you know, we've gone through floods, building changes, just like everything has been thrown at it. Yeah. And yet it's established, and 4 years amazing team.
Yeah, the team have been amazing.
Yeah.
We've seen a really good, solid core team established, and people that have stayed with us for years. Yeah. And people that have served on shorter times when they've, you know, things have changed in their lives, which has been amazing. Yeah. One of my biggest things about the team is having teenagers on the team. Right. Because I was a teenager on the team. Yeah. And if I hadn't had the opportunity, I wouldn't be here now doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And so I very much wanted to have youth as part of the team, because I think they're a really vital role. Yes. And so we've had, from the very beginning, several teenagers on the team, and we've seen them grow massively.
Really have,
on the team.
I know, you're right. And for a young child, like a 7-8-year-old, to look up and see like a 15-year-old, you know, no offense, but we might not be as cool as
exactly
15-year-olds are. Like, that's just wonderful, isn't it? That they see these great, being just great examples of you know, being part of a church, and it's, you know, to love
they've got
Jesus
a role that we can't do.
No, that's right. Yes.
They've got such a significant role. Yeah. And so they're not just there to do the little jobs.
No,
they've got a really important role that we can't do, because those kids, those 7-8-year-olds, are looking to those teenagers as the next people to look up to. Yeah. So I've loved having those teenagers on my team. Yes. They're a really, really important part of the team.
But it didn't just stop at Kids Club, did it? You know, your involvement with youth and Fuel.
Yep.
And
so after a couple of years of kind of getting settled, I then joined the Fuel team, which was great fun. I've loved getting to know the Fueligans on Friday nights, and kind of, just getting alongside them, joining that team, just getting to know them, and encouraging them, and seeing them step out in the things that God has for them. We had our last Fuel last Friday, and obviously my last Fuel. Yeah. And Jodie was just saying how, you know, when we first started together as the middle school girls, and we do our circle prayer time, and we'd be like, okay, we're all going to pray. Yeah. And, you know, at first it was, thank you God for Fuel, thank you God for Fuel, thank you God for Fuel. But like, we've seen them grow, and like seen them stepping out and being able to pray, and like, you know, it's amazing to see them now praying confidently and praying for others.
I know.
Like, that's part of the reason why you do these things, is just being able to see God work in their lives.
Yes. I think that's an amazing thing, especially at Fuel, that they see that in one another as well, don't they? Do you know, it's like, I'm not the odd one out, or, you know, and that support of like a lot of the middle school and that kind of really tricky season, and then they have that support of one another, and it's, those friendships are so key, aren't they? And that's just amazing that you've been able to be involved with that.
It's one thing I'm really going to miss.
So you've alluded to this may not be your permanent... Yeah. So because everything's been so easy, you've been here, there's been no ups and downs, you've decided to take another step, which which isn't quite correct. I mean, it's been a crazy 4 years, really, hasn't it?
It has.
You know, like, personally living in another country, away from family, different family things happening, and...
Yeah, there's the cost of moving away from family when you decide to move.
Throw a pandemic in there.
And throw a pandemic in there.
Like,
you know, there has been lots of family things that have happened.
That's
and,
right.
You know, the first year and a half, I think I actually went back every 6 months for one reason or another, which wasn't my intended plan.
No, that's right.
But that's just kind of what happened.
Yeah.
And then my second 18 months, I didn't go back at all.
Because you couldn't. Yeah.
And so...
Yeah.
And then the pandemic came. And
yes.
So yeah, it has been up and down.
Yes.
But, yes.
So you feel like God has, you know, you've been involved with Kids Club, great team set up, kind of feeling like those roots loosening again.
Yeah, I think last year just began to feel God kind of nudging me a little bit, and didn't quite know what it was at first. Before the pandemic, I was actually able to take a trip away. And to be honest, that trip was just a vacation. It was an opportunity to go and see some friends, an opportunity to go ride a camel, which was great. But actually, while I was there, I had some quite significant conversations with people, which reminded me of my time in the classroom. And at first I just thought I was missing the classroom, but then I came back here and it was still kind of niggling away. And I think as I began to pray about it and think about it, it began to become clear that maybe God was kind of nudging me out of my comfort zone of being just a TA, EA, and maybe looking to do my teacher training.
So you didn't actually say where you went?
No. So I went to Muscat, Oman, in the Middle East.
Yes.
And just the conversations that I had with people there, their experience of teaching was very different to kind of teaching in the UK.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what caught my attention. I never really had a desire to teach in the UK.
Right.
It was quite a lot, and also because I was involved in the church in the UK, doing teaching and involved in the church, just it didn't seem to work when I was there.
Yeah.
But the way the people were talking in Muscat and their ability to teach and be involved in church life and coach sports teams and have family life, and I was like, how can you do this?
Right.
Like, it just seemed different.
Yes. So tell us a bit about Oman. Like, what kind of really drew you, do you think, to that country?
I was quite surprised. I didn't really have any thought or intention that would happen. I love kind of that kind of culture. A lot of the families from my previous school were Arabic-speaking families, and so have spent a lot of time with those families. Doing Kids Club here, a lot of our Kids Club families here are Syrian families, and there's one family in particular that I spent a lot of time with, and they have us over, and they've taught us how to cook Syrian food, and are teaching us Arabic, and so there's definitely a love for that kind of culture as well. And so when we were there, it was amazing. I was actually really surprised at how beautiful it was. Like, there's mountains, there's desert, there's ocean, all in one place.
Amazing.
And just really felt safe.
Yes.
Going there. Obviously, I had friends there. I went with a friend, and we did lots of exploring. We explored the mountains and the desert, and just felt really safe.
Yeah.
And the people were so friendly and welcoming, and yeah, there was just something about it.
Yeah.
And the conversations about the school life.
Amazing.
Just, really, I think God was just planting little bits.
Yeah. But how that starts from, your work in England with those different cultures, and here, Fredericton is not super multicultural. It is multicultural, but you wouldn't kind of expect that here, and that God has put you in the path of so many people. Like, it's just
Yeah.
Amazing. So like the other visa process, it was completely easy, like no issues.
Yeah, so I kind of began to push a few doors
Yeah.
and just explored what those options might be. I knew that moving to another culture is obviously a big thing, and moving from the UK to Canada is one thing, but moving to a Middle Eastern culture,
Yes.
with a whole new language, is going to be a whole new ball game. So decided that I wanted to take maybe the first year a bit slower and not jump straight into a teacher training year.
Right.
So looked to do like a year as an EA first, just to get back into the school system.
Yeah.
Because I've been away for so long, and curriculums change, and we've had a pandemic.
Yes.
So began to look for school jobs, but actually that was quite difficult. And I planned to do a trip in April, May of this year to go and look at schools and to make a few contacts, but because of COVID, I had to cancel that trip. So it was looking quite difficult to do that. And so again, I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to happen. And so it was kind of looking like, well, maybe I'm just going to have to go back to the UK for a little while. But then Jesus kind of really 180'd the situation, and to cut a very long story kind of short, a contact that we had over in Oman made contact and said, I could offer you a job as a teacher in my nursery. And I was like, you do know I'm not a teacher. But she knew the degree that I had. She knew that I'd got 7 years classroom experience, and she was very willing and said, if you're willing to kind of learn as you go, we'd be willing to kind of train you as you go. Yeah. And so kind of we started the process, and I had a chat with her on Zoom, which was not a chat. It turns out it was an interview. Wow. And then, she offered me the job, and so the paperwork for that is currently going through.
Amazing.
And hopefully overcoming a few isolation requirements. I'm looking to start on October 3rd.
Wow. And even, just from speaking to you leading up to that process, you weren't kind of like, what will be. You were very faithful in praying, seeking God, asking Him for the direction and the way forward, and kind of some very low moments, wasn't there? In terms of like, what's this going to look like? And it's hard when you've got, am I going to be in one of 3 countries? Like, that's incredibly doesn't feel good.
No, and when you're living on a visa, and, my visa here was job dependent,
right?
And so, that's limiting in itself. But then if I go to the UK, what do I do when I get there? Like, do I get a job? That's kind of tying me down for a bit longer. And there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yes, and waiting.
But I think going back to that original visa story and knowing God is faithful.
And I remember talking to you about that. And reminding yourself, which was such a reminding God of, you did this before, and I feel you've said this, so
and
do
holding
it again.
On to those promises. So
great.
So
so good. Honestly, Gemma, just from how you've been so faithful and just so joyful in all that you've been doing, and so diligent, and so you've been such a blessing to us here at Christ Central. We're going to miss you terribly.
I'm going to miss you
but
guys
we're not
too.
going to think about that too much. But just what the legacy that you've left, and the imprint that you've put on so many people's lives has just been wonderful. So thank you for taking this time. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next month and see who's in the hot seat next month.